Hi, I'm Sydney at Sid the Great. You want to look into the camera and tell them who you are?
I don't have a name.
At Kaleia Martin, at 1L Michelle.
That's weird. Hi, I'm Kaleia Martin.
And we are here today to discuss In Search of Common Ground. So, because it's my favorite book and Kaleia loves me enough to have read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but didn't enjoy it as much as I did, I don't think.
I don't understand why it's your favorite book. I'm very perplexed. I thought at the end of this I was going to be like, I get it. I don't get it at all.
Okay, well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
Shall we? Okay, so I wanted to talk about intercommunalism and dialectical materialism.
Do you hear what you said? That is why I don't understand why this is your favorite book.
Because it's a whole theory. Like it's this whole. I'm about to read it because I actually can never put it into terms. When I'm trying to figure out what it is exactly. The dialectical materialist believes that everything in existence has fundamental internal contradictions. That's an interesting. It's something I had never thought about before I read this book.
Sure, but nobody knows what the heck that means. Like
this idea that like everything has good and bad in it. See, that's why I thought you were gonna like it.
I did like it, but it took me half the book to figure out that's what he was trying to say. Instead of saying
it's like one sentence.
Dialectical materialism, he could have said
But it literally says it right there.
Right, and then everything else is dialectical materialism, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, just stick with good and bad. That's all you had to say.
You wanted to use big words, you had a PhD. At this point,
I see.
So.
I was like, oh, you're trying to flex for the people. I'm not the people at this point because this is too much. And I read.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would not recommend this book to someone who is not an avid reader. That's for sure.
I mean, I definitely had to use the dictionary a lot.
Yeah, it kind of annoyed me.
Yeah, but I'm okay with that. I had to use the dictionary a lot when I read Malcolm X for the first time.
Oh.
Did you not? Did you already know all those words?
I don't recall any words that I needed to look up.
Oh,
in
well,
that book.
yeah, I didn't. But that was the first book I read, too, though.
Okay,
so by the time
that's
I got
fair.
to all the rest of these, it was kind of like, I don't need a dictionary for this, or I've seen this word before. Okay, yeah, so this idea of intercommunalism, which I think is the idea that there are no such thing as nations anymore because technology has turned everything into small communities, small groups of people. Would you say you agree or disagree with that?
I think it's an interesting theory.
Okay.
I feel like the introduction helped me kind of understand what was happening when they were talking about the difference between philosophy and ideology.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels
Which is?
So whoever wrote the introduction, I don't know who wrote it.
I think it's Kai.
Sorry, I had to clear my throat. Whoever wrote the introduction said that a philosophy is basically more loose and open-ended,
Okay.
and it's more curious about the why of how things are, whereas an ideology is supposed to be firm and basically feel like absolute because it's supposed to persuade people.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like his theory, intercommunalism,
Mm-hmm.
is a theory that I kind of feel like is more of a philosophy than an ideology.
Because it's loose?
Right.
Okay.
Like it's subjective versus an absolute, this is what's going to happen. Because I'm not sure if
Don't you? But I feel like it's already happened is what he would have been saying because of technology. Because like you can literally reach across the ocean in 10 seconds if you want to and connect with someone who lives in a completely different country. And you can fly now to places.
Yes. And I feel like, so I agree with him from the standpoint of like being able to connect and essentially be one community. But what I got from what he was saying is that at that point of like revolutionary intercommunalism, there's no separate identity. So like there's one common identity, which is why I think Eric Erickson asked like at what point is an identity ineffective and just like nothingness?
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like even though I think he's right about being one community, I think that everybody will continue to have their own identities. They just won't hold any social and institutional power.
So that's where you think we're moving towards? Do you think it's possible to reach because I define that as that human culture that he was talking about throughout.
Right. I think that we can have a human culture and still retain aspects of a differential identity. So it's like I don't think we'll ever live in an America where I don't see you as black and see someone as white. But I do think we can live in a culture where society won't be able to predict our life outcomes based on the fact that I see you as black and see somebody else as white.
Okay,
if that makes sense.
I think that so far, and because the question I raised from this was, how sad is it that the only way to to have our salvation would be not having any differential between us.
Right.
Like you can't be male or female. You can't be black or white.
I don't think that's
gray
possible.
blobs. But see,
right.
this is why I think it might be, because you listened to my voice message. I was thinking about it like this. I was like, by 2050, if we're here in 2050, based off of climate change, which I know is your favorite topic, we're all going to be brown, right? The world will be brown. Essentially, some shade of tan, because we're all going to be of mixed race, which we already are. Because you said you did your
First of all, let's not even because
what is it called?
No, I think the whole the world's going to be brown by 2050. It's going to be more brown, but I don't think that white people will be erased. Like when people.
Oh yeah, okay, but I think it'll be so minute though. Because we'll still be here in 2050, so that means even black people won't have been erased.
I don't think that it will ever get to a point where white people are so minute that they're I don't think they will ever be the minority in America. Like there will be more of African American, like black people. There will be more brown people, but I think in America, right now, there are still more white people in total. Versus each individual. Right,
but it's only 2019 right now, though, is what I'm saying.
Sure.
And so where the science, I guess you'd have to ask where the scientists are getting these predictions
from.
But
I'm just
let's
skeptical.
say they're true, right, for argument's sake.
For argument's sake.
For argument's sake, by 2050, we're all going to be brown. So I was like, dang, so we're already moving in the direction of eliminating race. And then I was like, and then when we come to the male-female thing, right, so it's not necessarily sex that I think is a problem, it's gender. And the idea that the male gender deserves all these things that the female gender does not, right?
Sure.
But then we're getting agender clothing now, right? As in we're like kind of eliminating, at least in the fashion world, right? You have all these different examples of people wearing gender neutral things. So you got crop tops, i.e. Will Smith, i.e. Prince, i.e.
your favorites.
Kid Cudi. You have men in skirts, i.e. Jaden Smith. That's the only example I have. And then the dress. You had Pharrell in the dress for the GQ shoot. And then you also had GQ just did a men in makeup issue. So we're getting all we're crossing these barriers here when it comes to gender. So what would be then you got sexuality, right? I guess that would also have to, I guess, because nothing could exist. We always have to be gray blobs. So now even sexuality now, I think people are starting to understand it is on this spectrum. Well, some of us are starting to understand it is on a spectrum.
It's less crazy to say that it's a spectrum. Like people won't be like, get out of here, like what are you talking about?
Some people, unfortunately, but it seems like
there are more people who will listen and at least entertain the theory.
And then I think there's even, growing up, I feel like I only knew that there was straight and there was gay. And now all of a sudden I know that there's pansexual and there's asexual and there's all these other things. It's literally a spectrum, and it's literally all these different ways to identify.
And that is exactly why I think we will never be blobs. I think there will just be a million different ways to identify, but none of those ways equates to advantage or oppression. Like they will just, you can just exist however it is you want to exist, but none of those identities you hold will either benefit or negatively impact your life outcomes.
And how long will that take?
I would argue that we are on that trajectory now.
Okay.
So basically it's like I agree with his theory up to the point where he says will result in one single identity. I actually think it's the complete opposite of having many millions of identities, but none of them mattering in a material way as he talks about.
Okay. See, I was thinking of it maybe we are getting there. I kind of argued against my point when I talked about how many different sexualities there are. But in terms of gender and race, we're more so going in the opposite direction as saying, if the whole we're all going to be brown by 2050 thing were true, and if the gender thing with clothing continued on the trajectory that it's on.
Right.
So,
but I think that race, I don't think race will go away just because we are all brown.
So now, because have you heard of the browning and the whitening theory before? This idea that you can either be brown and identify as brown, or you can be brown and identify as white.
Right.
So.
And we're seeing that now.
Or which one do you think we're seeing?
I think we're seeing both. I think people are already experiencing that choice. where like when you think about the Hispanic population, when they check the census, you can check Hispanic, but then you can also say I'm white, or you can say I'm brown. And making that decision, checking that box makes a huge impact on your life.
Yeah, and there's much psychological implication going along with that too.
Oh yeah,
definitely. To identify as white and to identify as brown, to identify as Asian American or to identify as Asian is two completely different things.
Right.
Because we talked about that with Barack Obama. They were saying that he was no blacker than when he became the president of the United States. Because he identified as mixed. He didn't identify as an African American male, to my understanding.
Right.
And again, it has some implications.
It does.
So,
it does.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm eager to see where that goes. I'm here for the agender clothing.
I know. But why don't we just call it clothing at that point?
So, right. Which is interesting.
Because
I guess because we're going in that direction now, there still has to be a category for it.
And that's where I think Huey is right, that with certain, I think probably with things, we will get to a point where it just is. Like, we don't have to call it men's clothing, women's clothing, we'll just call it clothing.
Okay.
But when it comes to like people, I think that's where we'll still see the different identities. Like, you can go to other countries and they don't have a men's restroom and a women's restroom, they have restroom. And one minute you can see a man walk out, and the next minute you can walk in as a woman.
And isn't that interesting that there's so many different realities going on? That was a major takeaway for me from this book, was that there's all these different realities going on that are impacted by the combination that makes up your intersectionality, right?
Right.
And that none of them are more important or any less valid or more valid than the other one. That was my major takeaway. That's why I like this book so much. Maybe you already had that going for you in your soul and your spirit, but that's what this book is.
Maybe that's what it is. Because when I was reading this book, I kept making notes to, like, excuse me, I kept making notes to what they were saying and comparing it to what I've heard other people say. So when Huey P. Newton talks about, and I think Eric Erickson talked about it too, when they're talking about this whole concept of your reality being based off of your lived experiences, like what you were just saying, like it's a collection of your experiences, and Eric Erickson's experience being an immigrant to the country, and Huey P. Newton's being a black person born in America are completely different, but they arrive at the same conclusion. Dr. Kamara Jones has what's called, she does allegories on race and racism. And so one of her examples is, she gives an example, say me and you, we decide we're hungry and we go to a restaurant. And so as we go into the restaurant, everything's fine, we get seated, we're looking at the menu, I get my half and half sweet tea lemonade, you get your water and you don't drink it. And then as
Why did you even have to bring that up?
just had to throw that out there. So as we're eating, we look outside and we notice that people are upset, right? And the door is closed. And so we might say to ourselves, like, I wonder why they're so upset. Like, if they're hungry, why don't they just walk in, right? And what we don't know is that while we're sitting inside eating, the restaurant has closed. So the people outside are frustrated because they too are hungry, but are not permitted in to eat. And so she was basically saying that if you're sitting in the restaurant, it's easy to say to those people, well, if they were hungry, they should have just came in and got food, not realizing that there is a barrier put in front of them that we did not have to deal with. To say, like, your reality is based on where you're seated at the table, and if you have a seat at all.
Facts.
So that's you know, I feel like Huey was saying that, which is interesting because this was in the 70s, and Kamara Jones' video was from, like, the 2010s? Is that a thing?
The 2010s.
That sounds ugly.
I think I call it the 20-teens, but I'm not sure. I haven't had to say it very often.
Oh, I like
we're
that better.
We're about to be in the 2020s now, so that don't even matter.
Yeah, this was a weird
This is the
phase.
last teen of it.
The 20-teens, that's better.
The 20-teens. One thing that stuck out to me about the book, too, was this idea of inner versus outer colonization. Did that stick out to you at all?
I need an example.
Okay, i.e., for instance, they were saying that outward colonization, like the colonization of a whole group of people, cannot take place without already there being some internal colonization going on, meaning, like, I guess I've already embedded all these ideas in you about your people and who you are, and so that's why it was so easy to then colonize the whole group.
Right.
So, but that didn't stick out to you?
I missed that specific point, but I did, one of the things that stuck out to me, and again, I think it was just me reinforcing things that I've learned from other people, was this concept of internalized inferiority. And so that's what, I feel like what they were describing is that's the term I learned to explain what they were describing. So essentially meaning, there's a point in the book where it's talking about, I don't know where it is. I need tabs.
Yeah, you didn't have your sticky notes.
I didn't.
That's
I
why
didn't
when you
have
were
my
kind of
sticky
looking through this
notes.
now, I was like, she better know where that's at.
Yeah, no. There's a point in the book where it's talking about, at a certain point, the oppressed person inevitably takes on certain characteristics of the oppressor. And so I know we've talked about before, like the concept of like during slavery when the black male would be whipped or chastised by his slave master and then would come home and whip or chastise his wife. And then she would in turn whip and chastise her children. So continuing to pass down what you're learning and internalizing that behavior as okay, and also internalizing the fact that when it's done to you, it is okay because you are inferior.
Yeah. Yeah, that, and I think, because we were talking about it before you got here, this idea that we just keep passing down all these negative ideas. Essentially what I was asked was, where do I think the hypermasculinity comes for black men? What was I saying? I didn't know she was looking. Cecilia asked me that. And we were talking about, I was like, well, possibly from the Bible, but I haven't read it, so it's kind of hard for me to speak on it.
There
but I'm
is
like,
some
if I had to guess,
sexism in the Bible.
yeah, I would say if I had to guess, I would assume that.
Right.
And then I was talking about slavery. I was like, the buck breaking, the fact that white slave owners raped their black male slaves, that might have been the reason why they felt the need to be hyper masculine once slavery ended. Now I got to prove them a man, because not only I couldn't protect myself, and then I couldn't protect my wife or my children. And again, like you were just saying, I get beaten, chastised, so now I'm going to come and I got to pass that energy off somewhere, and I can't do it to my slave master.
Right.
So, yeah.
But I think even before buck breaking, which is like the most extreme, just the fact that somebody came into your home and took you and your family and you could not defend yourself.
Right.
Or someone, once you are enslaved and someone decides, oh, I'm gonna sell your kid away, and your wife is looking at you like, do something, and y'all both know you can't do anything.
Yeah, yeah. Which, I mean, I don't think that, to me though, the crazy part about that is, to me, that's just not a masculinity thing. That's just like a human instinct. I feel like to want to take care of your children. But for some reason, I feel like hyper masculinity does not embody or exist in the same way that hyper femininity does. I don't know why, but maybe it's because I'm a woman and I haven't seen hyper femininity be a sad thing, but I have seen hyper masculinity be toxic. Have you seen hyper femininity be a toxic thing?
I don't know if hyper femininity is a thing, but I have seen like toxic feminine traits. I kind of feel like the notion of like expecting the man to be the sole provider and take care of you is toxic. But I also know where that comes. It comes from the same place that hyper masculinity come from. So it's like we have issues with men who want to be seen as these hyper masculine and like strong people, because now women are saying, oh no, we don't need you to like try to do everything. We can do it ourselves. And then at the same exact time, we're still telling men don't cry, or saying you can't wear certain things, or you need to toughen up, and you should be making more money because I shouldn't be making more money than you.
Right.
So
there's a lot in it.
I say we as in society, I feel like we're at like this very strange point in time where we are seeing what is not working for us anymore, but we still have been taught the old, like those things. So sometimes like it kicks in subconsciously.
Yeah.
So it's like I can say, oh yeah, I want an equal partnership, and I don't want to do gender roles, but then low key still expect that the men take out the trash.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy.
And you don't even catch it.
But it's normal though.
It is.
And it's just all this. I guess it's the idea that you got to unpack and unlearn a lot.
You
of
have
stuff.
to, and it has to be conscious, because if you rely on your subconscious or your unconscious, you're gonna go back to those things that you said you don't believe in anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I guess you also get to kind of create it for yourself too, though.
Right.
Like, is there anything wrong with wanting to be like a feminist, but then still thinking that men should take the trash out? But I guess it sounds hypocritical. But is it?
I don't think so, but I think it needs to be a conscious recognition of, yes, I believe these things.
Right.
And I also want you to do this. So for instance, I believe like marriage is a partnership. I don't want a diamond ring. And I still believe the man should propose.
Okay.
So, or not should propose. I won't say that. I would like to be proposed to.
Right, because this is something about getting on that knee, right?
Right.
It just does not look right. But is it because we just haven't seen it before, though? Because everything that exists now has been created by someone who believed it to be true and to be right. and correct?
I think I had to unpack this for myself and check to make sure, like, why are you so, like, why is that such a thing for you? And for me, I guess it got to the point where I just had to decide, this is one of the things that I did imagine, and I think this is not a bad thing. Like, it doesn't hurt the other person, so this is what I would like to have.
Right, but how do we know it doesn't hurt the other person? How do we know there are men out there that want to be proposed to? I don't think, I have not met one that I know of.
I think I would compromise with, like, all right, you propose first and I'll propose after. Like, that's just
where the line is for you.
Yeah,
I feel
like,
that.
there's just one of those lines.
I feel that. It is weird. I saw a meme that was like, it was like a girl on one knee proposing to her man, and it was like, I'd rather die first.
I did see that.
And I was like, I get it. There's something about it that just don't feel right. But again, it's still learned behavior.
Yeah, it's still like a societal, it's a social construction.
Women might have been out here on,
well, first of all, proposing and diamond rings and all that stuff was a marketing strategy by jewelry companies.
I'm sure.
So,
I don't believe that. Kind of like Halloween. They say Halloween's a marketing thing.
Yeah, exactly. So none of it really has any, like, spiritual significance.
And I think when you think about that and you think about nature, you realize how much of the stuff that we do is just not natural, even though it seems or feels that way. Even monogamy, you could go into that argument. Like, how natural is that when animals don't do it? Nobody else does it but human beings.
I think penguins do it.
Penguins?
I think. Maybe it's like
I have heard
a certain,
that before.
Maybe not all penguins, but I feel like there is like one,
at least one penguin.
One species.
Well, out of all the species, out of all the animals, it's just us and them.
What about otters? They be holding hands. You ever see those pictures of, like, otters cuddling and holding hands? It's really cute.
Like, you know, I'm not a big animal person.
That's true. Psychopath.
So, there's that. I heard that.
Oh.
And I would have heard it in editing too, by the way. So yeah, we already talked about unconscious lackeys. There's a part in here that talks about.
Did you say unconscious lackeys?
Unconscious lackeys, kind of like not understanding what you've done. So that's another reason why I like this book is because.
Did it say that?
Yeah, on page 65.
I need to see that. Lackeys?
Yeah.
I love that word.
I can tell. You got really excited when I said it. Yeah, it's right. You see where it says Newton? Next paragraph.
But after the plane falls?
And not that sentence, but the next sentence. And they answered that Pilate was a victim and unconscious lackey of a ruling circle.
And it's funny because I have that whole paragraph highlighted.
Me too. Look at us.
Look at that.
That's another reason why I like this book, is because I think this book is what really made me begin to believe that, kind of like we were having that conversation about going to heaven or going to hell, if people who owned slaves deserve to go to heaven because they were forgiven and because they believe in Jesus, or whatever the reasons are that if you are of a Christian faith, you think that you are now eligible or deserving of heaven, right? And this idea that if they say, oh, I'm sorry, and they mean it, and they say that I accept Jesus into my heart, they can go to heaven. But again, I think that so many people are even in those horrifying cases, so many people are just products of their environments. Like, imagine you've been born into slaveholding and you've been told your entire life that it's right, clearly, because how else do these people have slept at night, right? Other than to believe that this, mind you, they use that same Bible to say that this is the position of black people, is to be enslaved, and you were put on this earth to serve white people, right? Or whoever the slaveholders were at the time, because there were some black slaveholders. But yeah, it's this idea that people are really just products of their environments, and it comes out really bad. And so when they die, I'm kind of like, as long as you know, because there won't be no slavery in heaven, I don't think.
But I feel like that's too
easy,
lenient, because I think people are products of their environment up to a certain point. Like the nature, nurture, like I think both
biology
of them.
And all that.
Right, like
genes versus something. I know what you're talking about.
Like, so like your environment is going to shape the way you think, but I also believe, and the Bible also talks about, like, there's going to be a point, like, nobody is not ever going to have a chance to hear the gospel. So, like, in the Bible it talks about, or I think the question that was posed that the Bible was answering is, like, what if you really never heard of Jesus or God? Do you still go to hell? And the response to the Bible was, everyone will have a chance to hear the gospel. It might not be to the same extent as someone who was born in the church, but you still were exposed to it, and at that point you chose not to listen to it. So therefore, you could assume that it was being suggested that that person would still go to hell. Granted, the Bible is a very subjective book, meaning that a lot of people can interpret it, obviously, to justify whatever it is that they want to justify.
Whatever it is.
But I think that there is a certain point in time that even if you're raised a certain way, I don't think any slaveholder really never once thought, maybe this is wrong.
Really? I think that it might. I mean, I think we all might think that, because it goes back to the idea of dialectical materialism, that everything has contradictions, right? I think that at any given point in time, everything in this world has good and it has bad in it. That's everything. Even I heard somebody the other day try to tell me why vegans still do harm, because they're killing plants, and plants can some kind of way feel because they react to certain stuff. I don't know, but somebody literally said that to me, and I was like, okay. So say that to say, if that is true, then yes, because you can even say it as, well, these are plants. You can call it maybe flowers of some sort, and you're killing flowers. You're killing something, but you do have to eat food, right? But so everything has these contradictions in it. So I'm like, maybe there were slaveholders that thought maybe this is bad, but if everything around you is functioning in a way that this is how things are just supposed to flow. And mind you, you got people literally using the Bible to justify this. Can those people be blamed for? Now this is me, this is me playing devil's advocate.
Right. I think, like, even when you look back at the records, so Thomas Jefferson writes about the fact that slavery is, I forget exactly, basically to say they knew slavery was wrong, and they knew that they would need to get rid of it, but his concern, he said, was like, right now the Negro is like holding a wolf by the ears. So you should let the wolf go, but you're terrified that as soon as you let that wolf go, it's going to eat you because you held on to its ears.
White guilt?
Basically, to say, like, we know this is wrong, but we can't stop, because if we don't control them, they might, like, seek revenge, as they should.
Right.
So I think there was always the understanding that, yes, these are human beings, but it's in our best interest that we continue to control them. Okay. So now we need to justify it.
Yeah, now if you realize that what you're doing is wrong, but I mean...
So I do not think that there was a slaveholder who was really out here like, oh, this is just peachy. Everything's great.
But then you had people who justified it and said that you can't take care of yourselves anyway.
Right, but that's...
You're better off as a slave
But
anyway.
that idea didn't come before they needed a reason to justify their mistreatment. Okay. So like Dr. Ibram Kendi talks about the fact that when we think about racism, we understand it completely backwards. We think that people started off hating people and then decided to discriminate against them and then put it into policy to like make it formal. History tells us that no, people acted out discrimination first. So Africans were kidnapped first.
Right.
And then we put in writing that this is what we're going to do to them. And then once people started asking questions, that's when we came up with the racist justifications for why we did it, which is what created the ignorance and hate in people that we still see today.
Was the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken, right?
Yes, but I think in this case we know which one came first.
Yeah, absolutely. That had to have been there and in place. But I mean, it's interesting though, because they started with Native Americans.
Right.
And at least,
and they justified that too. They slaughtered Native Americans and then rewrote history to say that, oh, they were savages. Oh, they attacked us. We had to kill them.
Yeah.
When we know that's not what happened.
What an ingenious system.
Because
not only did they win, because history is told from the perspective of the winners.
Right.
But they literally created slavery.
Yeah.
It's the most ingenious thing.
It is. It's kind of like brilliant, but in the worst way.
It's absolutely brilliant. Like I had a classmate ask once, like, well, why didn't they like rebel? Like there were plantations where there were more slaves and there were people who were like, keeping them enslaved. But it's like, do you understand how scary of a system it was? I was reading 12 Years a Slave, and they said the punishment for running away on a particular plantation that he was on, I think, was 300 lashes. Even if it was 100, it was either 100 or 300.
Even if it was one. First of all, no.
And it would be like, oh, you were late, that's 50 lashes.
Right.
And that was a light punishment. So I'm like, and then mind you, then you got word of mouth. Because I was talking to somebody about how I read a story about a slave who had run away, and then they lashed him when he got back, and then they locked him into this like wooden box thing, and he was eaten to death by rats because they could smell his wounds. And so imagine that gets around. Hey, Sid, you heard about John up the street? Girl, you said you was running? You might want to rethink. You know, and then not only that, but then who could you trust? It was literally the most genius shit ever.
Yeah.
And it just sucked that it was evil genius.
But I don't think it was. It is. Because the reality is like, Black people are concentrated in the South still to this day.
Still,
And when you look at every single health outcome, Black people are at the bottom, and we're at the top of all the negative ones, i.e. police shootings, like with unarmed, unarmed shootings. So just like, for the people who say slavery is a choice, I could say today, well, getting killed by the police is a choice, but that would not go over well, right? But it's, but it's the same thing. Yeah. So it's like, if it's so easy, or if we can look back with hindsight and say, well, why didn't they just do more? The question is, what are you doing right now? Because, we're not in chains, but from a health and wealth standpoint, we are still at the bottom. We're still being exploited. It just looks different.
Absolutely.
So why haven't we done anything?
Yeah. But I think that it comes back to, was it? No, it wasn't this book. It was another book. The idea that we can't be self-condemning, and then our own ego, because there are so many people that would say, "Oh, I would have did this. I would have did that."
Mm-hmm. You're not
no,
doing
I know
nothing
you
right
would
now.
not have done a thing. Right. That's because even when the 13 documentary went off, that was one of the things that resonated with me the most. When Brian Stevenson was like, "I've had so many people come up to me like, what would you do?"
That's my favorite line.
And he was like, "Well, we're living in that right now.
Yeah.
So what are you doing?"
Right.
And I was like, "Woo. Well, I'm bald."
Right, that's it. That's why she just cut the black. That's it.
Oh yeah, Ava knows. She did all the interviews and said, "Oh, this is how I'm ending the movie."
That's it.
Because they have a movie about him coming out, right? Mm-hmm. With Michael B. Jordan. I don't like him.
Your favorite actor of all time?
Yeah.
I have one.
Okay.
And this was one, you probably did not pay attention to this at all. I'm curious. When they're talking about self-defense, that was the most impactful thing from this whole book for me.
Okay, what did it say?
So
it's been a while to review that.
I gotta go to my tabs.
Oh yeah, why didn't you what is it called, bunny ear it?
I did.
Oh, but then why you say you needed tabs earlier?
Because I had to go back and do the thing.
That's the old school way of doing it. The bunny ear. Is it bunny ears? Is that what people call it?
You can. It's your world. You can call it whatever you want.
You can, but I want to know what the people call it. Kind of like hot dog and hamburger. And I ain't got to worry about the sound. Okay.
So page 49.
49?
Yep. All the way at the bottom. It's kind of a long paragraph.
It's the whole page.
But at the very bottom where it starts with, so even Gandhi believed.
So even Gandhi believed at one time that all Indians should learn military discipline. His point was, of course, that nonviolence does not just seem abstention. Mm-hmm. See, that would be a word I have to look up. Mm-hmm. From a violence, which one would not have means to carry through anyway, but the renunciation of armed act. Was it just that page? Or
In this sense, the meaningful position is not that the arbitrary violence versus fragmented nonviolence, but that disciplined violence versus disciplined nonviolence. Basically, to say that if you are practicing nonviolence, the only way you're doing that is if you are trained in violence and decide not to use it.
Wow.
So when we black people think we're being nonviolent, no, you don't have any other options. You don't know how to shoot a gun. You don't know how to fight. White people are out here armed and ready. So yeah, you're practicing nonviolence, but you don't have any other options, which is why we're not effective anymore. There is no threat of violence. When you think about Martin Luther King, Nation of Islam was about that life. Martin was saying, we're going to do this whole nonviolence thing, and Malcolm was saying, we're going to do self-defense, meaning if you hit me, I will shoot you.
Which was facts.
Right. Yeah. So I think I don't think I fully grasp that nonviolence does not mean I'm not going to fight you. It means I could kill you, and I'm going to choose not to. Yeah. And therefore, you need to sit down, and we need to have a conversation about how to fix this.
Yeah, that was an epiphany. That did not stand out to me.
Yeah, so that actually, I've had my concealed carry for over a year and a gun purchase permit for months. So this reading that was like, I need to buy my gun and be trained.
Absolutely.
That way, when I say I'm nonviolent, it's not to say I can't hurt you. It's that I'm going to choose not to.
Yeah, and I really gotta get up and go about it, because there are so many things unfolding around us right now.
Oh, absolutely.
That make it very, very like a very, very serious affair that black people arm themselves. Because thinking about the Roe versus Wade, we got this conservative ass Supreme Court. We got these laws that all these states have passed, which are one by one. People are suing, and then they're trying to appeal, and it's eventually going to be up to the Supreme Court. And that's the whole goal behind it. That many people are arguing is that it gets up to the Supreme Court, and then they say Roe versus Wade is out.
We're done.
It's crazy to me how secure people feel when there's really no security at all. And what really made me realize that was I don't know if it's the 1965 or the 1964 Voting Rights Act, but one of them had a part in it, and it or like a title or something like that, right? That said, "Hi, we're gonna keep an eye on all these states that have been have shown to have voter suppression. We know over there in Mississippi or whatever, or in this town or county, I should say, that there are 200 black people and there's only one registered to vote. Something ain't right. We're gonna keep an eye on that." They did not renew that in 2016.
Right.
And I'm looking, when I read it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Was this in the news?
And then when you hear the story come out about the North Carolina districts being gerrymandered so much that, one, they wanted to find a new word because gerrymandering did not express the severity of how bad the maps were drawn. And then, two, the Supreme Court saying that the maps were drawn with surgical precision when it came to disenfranchising black voters.
Yeah, I heard.
And then when you think about the fact that they did not renew the concept of watching to make sure states carried it out.
Yeah.
It's not a coincidence.
It's not that, Roe versus Wade, and then I saw that there were a group of Asian American students who were suing Harvard over affirmative action.
Yeah.
And I was like, because in saying that it benefits blacks and not, I guess, that community of people.
Yeah, it's saying that it's discrimination against Asian Americans.
Okay.
But when you look further into it, the same lawyers in the same group that are pushing behind that case are the same ones who pushed Ann Fisher out in Texas.
Which one is that?
So that was the white girl who did not get into the University of Texas and sued to say that affirmative action was discriminating against her.
Oh.
And so when she lost because she was the claim was that there were like 147 black people with lower GPAs and test scores than her, so they should not have gotten in. Well, it was thrown out because when you looked at the white people who were admitted, there were like 300 plus students who had lower test scores than her who did get in.
Yeah.
But she did not look at those 300. She focused on the black to say that it was reverse discrimination when the reality is she just didn't get in.
Right.
So the same lawyer and the same political lobbying groups that are behind that case went out and found the Asian Americans who would join the trial.
Wow.
Meaning they already had plotted what the issue would be and found people who would fit the narrative.
Right.
So low-key, those people in the suit are being manipulated for a larger purpose.
Yeah. And the larger purpose being getting rid of affirmative action.
Sure.
And think about what college would look like without it, right? Because again, you have people who have been fooled into believing that, oh, well, we don't need them anymore. Yeah. It's like, no, we need them because they're working. And that's what Ruth Bader Ginsburg said when they didn't renew that part of the bill or the act. She was like, no. We need it because it's working, and if we don't have it, then it won't be working. And I was like, woo, when I read
we
that,
do that all the time.
I was shook.
Even when it comes to, say, tobacco prevention. At one point, the tobacco use rates in North Carolina were like in the 10% less, right? Something like that. And so at that point, North Carolina, and that was because there were a lot of organizations doing a lot of work around prevention, education, alternatives to like tobacco if you did get addicted, like helping you quit early. And so 90% of tobacco users now started before the age of 18. So there was a lot of work on the front end doing prevention and education with teens. Well, the General Assembly of North Carolina said, wow, tobacco use rates basically don't exist anymore. So we're going to redirect that money to other things.
Right.
And fast forward to 2019 and you have like 30% usage rates, because at the same time that they took the money away was the same time the tobacco industry introduced e-cigarettes and vaping. And so now the rates have skyrocketed.
Of course.
And now it's like, oh man, we have a problem here. We should put money towards it, even though the reality is there wouldn't have been a problem if they had not rolled back what was working.
Yeah, that's wild, isn't it?
It's pretty
sad.
And
it's very ingenious.
It is.
It's definitely not a coincidence, and it's very scary because I feel like, again, going back to this idea of being trained and being able to protect yourself, Plessy versus Ferguson is something that could be overturned. And it sounds crazy, but if I had not read that they didn't renew that part of the act, I'd be like, oh, that sounds crazy. They wouldn't do that.
Right.
When I saw that affirmative action thing pop up on CNN, I was like, oh, we are about to be in 1955.
It's going to be worse than that. Like, we have literal kids in cages right now.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's already pretty bad. It's just not bad for us.
Yeah. And it's bad for us. It's just not bad for maybe the
direct.
Because like if you, it's still bad if you have someone that's in jail right now.
Yeah.
If you are related to somebody or you're dating somebody or whatever, and they're in prison for a non-violent drug offense, meanwhile, now all of a sudden these companies are coming out with all their weed and things.
Yeah. billion-dollar industries, and white people are still in jail. And even when they get out of jail, they have to explain why their work history doesn't exist, and what were you doing all that time? And that's if your record gets expunged.
Right. If.
And
we've seen what getting out of prison, like life after, looks like. If you would really, but again, it's an ingenious system, because me and Aisha were talking about the fact that people who have been in prison or convicted of felonies can't vote, and how they would probably vote for certain things because of what they've experienced.
Right.
So again, ingenious. Same thing with the 13th Amendment, this idea that, oh, well, slavery is outlawed except for punishment of a crime. I'd be trying to believe that was not on purpose. Like, I'd be like,
no, it was.
Maybe they weren't thinking it was going to turn into what it turned into. Like, maybe they didn't have the foresight. But then you have the springing up of all these prisons right at the ending of slavery and debt peonage and all the things. So. And
I think even if the people who wrote the legislation did not see that coming, the reality is that our political landscape has always been shaped by the elite, people with money. So we know that those prisons sprang up because people had already decided and calculated how much money they would make once they existed. So even if the person or that legislative body did not intend to do the negative thing, by working with people who you know have money and know will do anything to keep it, you are complicit in what happened. So when Bill Clinton said, you know, when he was campaigning for Hillary, well, I didn't know the crime bill was going to have this impact, but I did think we need to do something.
Right.
You also knew that the people telling you this were the police lobbies and the private prison owners and the people who get their contracts from prisons. So all those people were at the table with you as you're crafting this tough on crime bill. So even though you might not have realized that's what they were intending, you're complicit because you were sitting at the table with them and didn't expect them to look out for their own best interests.
Right. You definitely got to pay attention to who you're surrounded by.
Right.
And I still am trying to figure out how Bill and Hillary keep getting invited to the cookout. They were at Tyler Perry's studio opening.
And I don't understand.
I was like, how are they still, did we not all realize how shitty they were?
Like, people, if we cancel anybody, can it please be the Clintons? Please.
Today.
Like, that's my PSA. Cancel the Clintons. I don't like cancel culture, but if that's what we're doing, they should be at the top.
Oh, absolutely. But they are at everything. They were at Aretha's funeral.
Right.
People were like, what? Why are they there? They stand for the exact opposite of what Aretha was fighting for. When I saw them at Tyler Perry's studio opening, I was like, I just knew we had to rid ourselves of them. Michelle Alexander wrote a whole article about why black people specifically should not vote for Hillary when she was running. And yet and still,
here we are.
They were at Tyler Perry's studio opening with Will and Oprah. They were with the black royalty.
Right.
And I was just like, why are they? I don't know.
Report image.
I was sad.
Spam. Harmful image.
Right. Harmful to the black community. Him playing his damn saxophone.
But I think that goes to Huey's point where he talks about the purpose of the Black Panther Party. And he says, you know, a lot of it is education, and we do a lot of individual work with people, even though we know that's not what will fix the problem. We know the problem is institutions. We also know that people will not have enough will to fight the institutions until they realize that the institutions are what's putting them in this predicament. So it's kind of like black people still don't understand the connection between Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and the fact that a lot of our communities in cages or can't get jobs because of our criminal records. So it's still unconscious to us, so you can't address something if you don't know it exists.
Yeah, and it's wild too. Even their like survival pending revolution programs. See, I thought you were gonna say that they did all this education stuff, but the survival programs were more so about we gotta fulfill those basic needs because you also don't care about revolution if you're just trying to eat. And you don't have shoes or clothes and all that kind of stuff. So the Black Panther Party was fire. That's what the blue backlight is for.
Is it?
Yeah. You know they used to wear those powder blue shirts when they first started. So the blue background is, and so October is the anniversary of the founding of the Black Panther Party.
No, you know you're the Black Panther expert.
October 1966, people.
Wow.
What is this? That would be
something plus 3. A lot of years plus 3.
1966.
What is that?
50
years?
53.
53.
Thank you. 53-year anniversary of the Black Panthers. So hopefully I'll have this out today because October's over. Never mind.
Wow. No, this was good. I learned a lot about Huey.
Yeah.
I did not know the context around the purpose of the Black Panther Party, so that was helpful.
Yeah.
The self-defense concept, that was mind-blowing.
That
was the
Major
game
takeaway
changer.
for you?
And I
Okay.
appreciate the fact that Huey P. Newton, even though he contradicts himself in the book, but that's a whole nother thing, I do appreciate the fact that he does acknowledge this concept of good and bad existing all the time. I wish he would have taken it a step further, and I think he kind of said it, but not as clear as I wanted to. But, you know, my whole thing is, you know, people are just people. Like, we aren't good or bad. We're a collection of both things, and I think the labels are why we are at the place we are now in society, because we feel like we have to stick good and bad on people, and the reality is they're a mix of both, which is why it's hard. Like, either you're justifying negative things, like what we're seeing with Trump, because we've decided that he either has to be good or bad. He can't be both.
Right. Even though I would
think
just say he's just bad. I have not seen any good, but maybe that's because, again, it's
where you're
also about
sitting.
my perception.
Exactly, because there are people who
he says
love
such
him.
horrible things. I don't want to hear. You know what? That hit home for me. I remember when Rubio was running. This was when, you know, like the first time. So we were about to go into our second election here. But the first time Rubio was running, and I remember when he like was dropping out, people were like cheering and crying, and I was like, these people love this man. I was like, it hit me then. I'm like, how I feel about Bernie Sanders is how other people feel about whoever.
It's all about where you're sitting.
Yeah.
And even though it seems completely crazy that people would love Donald Trump, there are genuinely people who love him and think he's
sent here by
great.
God.
Yeah.
God's
And so
president.
whether we agree with that or not does not matter, because it's their reality.
Yeah.
And so if we can't find common ground, then we're going to stay polarized. Because if we had this concept of people are both good and bad, I think it would be easier for Trump supporters to acknowledge the things that he's done that are objectively not okay, but because they've been forced into this box of having to defend him because they're trying to prove he's a good president, now they're having to go against what they know is not right because it's one or the other.
Yeah, and there's no gray.
And there's no gray.
Yeah,
So
and there's always gray.
get in the gray.
Yeah. Anything else? Any final thoughts?
Oh, that's it.
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
I'll give it a thumbs up.
Okay.
And I would not recommend this to people who do not avidly read and interrogate their critical consciousness. Big words, a lot of loops.
Okay.
But if you are a reader, I would recommend this. I thought it was a good book. Still don't quite understand why it's your
It's my favorite book because it was the book that made me realize that people's realities are all valid.
Right, that's right. That's right.
You know what I'm saying? It was the book that made me, like, I think I talked about earlier about going to see Tommy Lauren. Did I talk to you about, did I bring that up?
No, but I remember you going to see her.
Cecilia, I think. Yeah, so Tommy Lauren came to ECU, and I remember I had, like, posted, like, going to see Tommy Lauren, and somebody DM'd me, and they were like, why are you going to that?
Right.
Did completely not understanding, and I completely understand. Because we were talking on the phone about it. I remember you were like, you can't force everybody in that room, Sid. Everybody can't handle it. I think you said that you yourself, like, couldn't handle it. So I went, and I was like, I'm going because to act like people who think like her don't exist is not going to get us
It's
anywhere.
naive.
And there are 20 million people that in some way think how she thinks, because 20 million people, if I remember correctly, voted for Donald Trump. Even though Hillary got the popular vote, right?
No,
She
53
won
million.
53, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Even more than I thought.
53 million.
And what was it, 55 million voted for Hillary?
Think so.
Because I feel like Hillary got 2 million more votes than he did,
Right.
which is very slim. So whatever it was that they found justifiable as in for voting for him, as to whether it was, oh, Hillary's a woman and I don't want a woman president,
Right, whatever. It doesn't matter.
There are 53 million, I said 20, 53 million people who think like Tommy Lauren in some way, shape, or form. So I was like, I have to get in the room with these people and be able to have a conversation with them. Because again, if they felt the same way I did, that we need to at least be able to have a conversation and find some common ground. Because my whole thing is, you got people who are like, if I give you free education, no, what was it? If I give you $1,000 a month, let's talk Andrew Yang real quick, right? Then that's just gonna make people lazy. People just won't want to work. They won't want to do anything. You got people who go, there aren't people who just don't want to work. People want to feel as if they have committed something to society and that kind of thing.
Right.
We could find some common ground. Maybe we could start giving people $500 a month.
Because
If we
I
could
can
just
use
say,
it, okay?
If we could just say, let's find in search of common ground. If we could just search for the common ground, people, we'd be good. So that's why I love this book that much. And the idea too of, it was just, I think because I had, at the time I was really looking for books that were like rooted in like thought and theory.
Oh, this is theory,
Yeah.
okay?
And so when I got
thought.
it out, and you know you read things when you're supposed to. Too.
Yeah.
So at the time it was really speaking to me. Like I was like, dang, like, because I had read, I feel like this was the last book I read of Huey P. Newton. I think I read his autobiography, and then there was his write. No, actually, I think I wrote. There's another book of just a collection of his speeches and writings, and I think maybe I read that one last, but I can't remember. But I just remember reading this and being like, "Oh, this is fire.
Yeah.
This is heat." It's a lot of big words.
It is.
It's two people with doctorates.
This was good. This is going to help me write my future book about good and bad. So it was worth the read.
Okay, I'm glad you feel
And
that
now
way.
you have one person on the planet
who
has read the book with you.
Because I literally everywhere I go. Have you read it? You and Dr. Lamont Hill.
Of course.
Yeah, he read it.
Of
But you know he
course.
reads 4 books a week.
Right. So it's not.
Yeah.
I'm in good
140
company.
pages. Huh?
I said I'm in good company then.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. So yes. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I feel like we're on like a Oprah like a
I know. I'm
stage right
preparing
now.
for my Super Soul Sunday moment. That's what this feels
Super
like.
Soul Sunday.
Her show? Really?
Oprah has. You know I don't like Oprah.
And you know I love Oprah.
I know you do.
So we need to find some common ground.
Okay. Well, we have. I gave her credit for
One of those videos.
something
yeah.
she did.
Right.
Yeah. So
Keep it up. Keep it up.
Yeah, I know you love
We
her.
need to-
But anyway, thank you for being here. Thank you for the time. Thank y'all for watching this, wherever this is at, on YouTube or. I'm gonna put a snippet, I think, on Instagram. I'm gonna cut all this out. Bye, y'all. It was real. Thanks for being here. Want to say something to that camera? Okay. Well, bye.